Hi everyone, my name's Darryl Panes, CEO of As Good As Gold Australia. And this morning, once again, I'm joined by my brother Brian, a partner at As Good As Gold.
Thank you, Darren.
And today we speak with an absolute icon in the precious metal space. I speak of none other, of course, than the one, the only Bill Holter, precious metals broker with Miles Franklin. Good morning, Bill.
Morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, good morning, Bill.
Always our pleasure, Bill. As I generally start these presentations, and I'll say a lot of water has flown under the bridge since we last spoke with Bill, because it has been a while. It's been 3 months. But the great news is, of course, that gold has held up really well. I mean, gold is trading US dollars at the moment, about 2020. It's been over 2,000 for a considerable period of time. It's held really well. Aussie dollars, just under 3,100 at the moment, so way over the $3,000 level. So we're all expecting it to be a fantastic year for gold.
Yeah, well, when you consider the geopolitical events that are happening out there, I mean, I know it's not the major reason for gold going up. There's a couple of things that we'll be talking about this morning with why it has to move ahead. But yeah, with everything that's going on in the world, you can see that gold and silver are going to expand in their monetary value.
Yeah, well, I mean, the last 12 months, gold's up 16%. Or thereabouts, the expectation
from a year ago.
Yeah, from a year ago. And so the expectation would be this year we could expect it to perform even better. So As Good As Gold Australia, we're going to be putting on a couple of events. One, of course, and this is to support our point of view and where we believe gold and precious metals are heading. We have an event that we'll be introducing and speaking about very, very shortly. That will be held in Adelaide. We've got some seriously good speakers, some of the best in the world coming over to Adelaide to speak at that event. One of them is Bill Holter, of course, who we're about to interview now. So a lot happening, and this will be the biggest event ever held in Australian history. We will have more qualified speakers. It'll be a 2-day event. It'll be spectacular. Nothing like this ever held in Australia before, here in Adelaide in November. Now, preceding that will be a major event, and As Good As Gold Australia are a major sponsor for a series of events that will take place with Tucker Carlson. And this will be in July, probably the first week in July. But the expectation here is massive. The response already has been huge, as one could expect. So we will be touring with Tucker over 5 states in July. So that will be spectacular.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy year. That we're looking forward to all of these.
So if As Good As Gold Australia isn't on the map yet, it certainly will be there. So, no, lots to look forward to. But let's now get down to what today's all about. And that's our interview with Bill, of course. So, Bill, look, there are many authors at the moment, mainstream media commentators, that are giving their impressions on gold, the economic climate. And when they make reference to gold, and the economy, they'll talk inflation. Now, I understand that inflation plays an important role here in the structuring and the pricing of gold, but let me continue. Interest rates. Yeah, well, I know that interest rates play a major role, of course, in the economic activity. I understand all of that. Conflicts in the Ukraine and the Middle East, especially now Israel. So yes, that impacts on the economy. I fully understand that, and the pricing of gold. Central banks, Eastern central banks, buying more gold than they ever have in history. Once again, that's an indication as to, what people are thinking about gold at the moment, in particular when the central banks get involved to the extent they are right now. But what I've noted is that there's from these people very little reference to debt. And, I look at it and I think to myself, surely debt is the major issue. No one seems to want to talk about it. No one seems to want to talk about the $34 trillion debt that the US has. No one seemingly wants to talk about the ramifications from all of that. I know this, that in conventional business, if you have excessive debt, you reach a point where you cannot fund your business any longer, then the banks will come in and close you down. If you do not have enough collateral to support the debt you're carrying, then they will shut you down. So debt is a major issue in all businesses, and yet it doesn't seem to get a mention here, even though the US is breaking all records with debt, of course, has no debt ceiling. I would like your comments on this, Bill, because it's just something that's been overlooked by mainstream. Why do they do that? Your thoughts?
Well, why they overlook it is because they don't want anybody to look at it. The credit markets are what I've spoken about for many, many years. And we're now at that point. I mean, I talked for years that mathematically we were approaching game over, and we've reached game over several years back. And when I'm talking about game over in the United States, the debt service now, the interest expense is over $1 trillion per year.
Yeah.
Last year, the U.S. took in $4.7 trillion in tax revenues, and they're paying out $1 trillion. It's going to be $1.5 trillion. It's going to be $2 trillion. As it stands right now, the U.S. is spending more than 20% of its tax revenues just to service past debt. And that's year after year after year, and that's going to increase. And especially if interest rates were to move higher from here, you'd blow the whole thing up overnight. Now, understand, and I've talked multiple times about credit. The entire world runs on credit, and I'm not talking just the financial world. The financial world cannot survive without credit, and neither can the real economy. Everything that you do every single day, everything you touch, everything you look at, you flip a light switch, you open your water spigot, you drive to work, whatever, everything has a credit usage attached to it. And I've used this example, a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread is not going to make it to the grocery store without credit. There's probably a dozen or more uses of credit to create that one loaf of bread. And if any of those 12 uses of credit fails, there's no loaf of bread. I mean, it goes from the farmer with the seed, the diesel, the fertilizer, then he's got to truck it to a silo, the silo then trucks that to the producer of the bread, and then you've got another trucking instance to the store. There's credit, there's uses of credit after credit after credit for just a loaf of bread. The world will cease if credit ceases. And let me go one step further. You were talking about inflation, you talked about interest rates, and then you brought up debt. Debt is already, I mean, you can look at commercial real estate in the United States, and it's beginning to implode. Those are real losses. Somebody's taking the losses. I mean, if a bank lent $300 million, but the building can only be sold for $200 million, somebody's going to eat that $100 million loss. That's deflationary, not inflationary. And understand that the Fed's biggest nightmare is not inflation, it's deflation. Because once deflation takes hold and they're not able to reflate the system, then all the debt comes down. And guess what? All these fiat currencies are backed by debt. So once debt begins to and actually fails, then the value of all these currencies basically goes to zero. So just understand, and you were talking at the very beginning, you talked about gold was up 16% last year, and you think this will be a better year. Be careful what you wish for, because $5,000, $10,000, or much, much higher gold prices means we're either approaching or have already attained, if you want to call it, Mad Max world.
Yeah, like I would have to agree. I mean, I've always said, be careful what you wish for. If gold goes to $50,000 an ounce, then what sort of a world are we living in? But no, like your comments are valid. I don't know how long this can continue, and I'm going to bring up the point later, but I'm going to save it till later. It's a point that Egon von Greyer's made, and it is a question that I will ask right at the end. But thanks for that, Bill. Brian.
Yeah, before I go on with the question, Bill, and on that question though, is it politicians not willing to tell the truth? Is it government not willing to tell the truth? Because at the end of the day, you do know that all fiat currencies go to zero. It's just a matter of time. So why are they so, why are they so not acknowledging the fact that gold has been money for 5,000 years, and there's nothing wrong with going back to a gold standard? What is their problem here? Is the problem is that we've got too many fat cats within governments that are living high on fiat currency and don't want to go back to a system, a history system that says if you have gold, it grows at 1.6% growth per year, has done for the last 100 years. What's wrong? Is it the politicians making fatal mistakes?
Well, I think I can sum it up with one word. It's called power. Under a gold standard, they cannot print limited amounts of money. And the fact that they're able to do anything via printing gives those in charge power. And if they don't have that printing press, if they're not able to do that, then they don't have power. In the case of the US, because it is the world's reserve currency, gold is the direct competitor. Some people may say, well, no, it's the euro or the yen or the British pound or what have you. They're all fiat currencies. They're all turds in the same bowl. Gold is the direct competitor to the dollar. And that is why for all these years, you've seen the gold price suppressed. You've seen the media basically tell you, don't buy gold. It's scary. It's risky. It's dangerous. It's all because the U.S. is the world's reserve currency. They basically have had an unlimited ability to borrow. And if the dollar was unmasked as being basically a worthless piece of paper because of the gold price goes to, like you said, 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever, if that were to occur, then you'd have a panic out of dollars, a panic out of treasuries. The U.S. would not be able to support the deficits that they've run year after year.
Well, thank you, Bill. I mean, it's nice to get another opinion from different people, and you're spot on. There's no doubt about that. All right, enough about debt. All about corruption. Yes, corruption and power. Yeah, yep. You said. But Bill would agree with us. Become your own central bank and use your own gold. Have your own gold standard. I think. Yeah. Question, Bill. The BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Now it was 5. Now it's 10, and so forth. So they're getting a little bit more power. But they have a very important meeting scheduled for October 5 of this year, I believe. This time, President Putin will head the talks, but before then he has planned, from what I've read, 200 regional conferences, which equates to 5 per week. Bill, from what I read, President Putin will be more forceful on this implementation of a gold exchange trading standard. Can you comment on what you know?
Well, I think it would be good for listeners to actually read his speeches. And I think he's done, since the Ukraine war started, I think he's done 7 or 8 public and I'm not talking small speeches, I'm talking, 30 minutes or more. Read those. The reason I say that, I've read through them and I can't find much that I disagree with. I mean, the man simply wants to be able to do business with free and fair settlement. And the fair settlement entails getting paid. If you're going to give a product, you want to get paid in something that's real. And that's what they're looking to do with the BRICS currency or currencies. They're looking to back with commodities / gold, silver, oil, gas, grain. Who knows, what the basket will be. But I would take the man at his word. I mean, he doesn't bluff. He's very, I think he's very forthright. And I think when he says something to the world, I think that's exactly what he means and exactly what he does.
Brian, do you have any other points on the BRICS, Darryl, before we move forward?
Well, you could go on for a very long time. With reference to BRICS. What I'd like to, I guess a comment that I'd like to make now is a reference to Egon von Greyer's. And Egon just recently said this: get into physical gold now or risk losing your entire fortune. So if you're not a gold bug, you'd better become one right now. This was his reference. And I could just feel that Egon was saying, it's going to happen now. You don't even think about it anymore. Just get into gold, become a gold bug. And he made a couple of references that I think are worth mentioning. So he said the last phase, and this leads to BRICS, of course, but the last phase of the dollar debasement is next. He says this very final phase of the dollar debasement to zero really started on June 29, 2022, when the US decided to seize all Russian financial assets. That action was the nail in the coffin as well as a shot in the foot of the petrodollar. This has been in place since 1973, as we know, to support the dollar with a payment system for black gold, since yellow gold was no longer supporting the dollar. To seize a major sovereign state, Russia's assets, can never end well. And then to give those assets to an enemy of that state, Ukraine, is guaranteed to seal the fate of the dollar-dominant currency system and the backers. There's a lot of validity in that. He then goes on to say, so we look at that major point, and he refers to BRICS, and he said, okay, the BRICS already, and Brian's already mentioned this, had 10 members, or has 10 members now. In addition, they've got another 30 that want to join, including, and he's listed Venezuela. The BRICS produce just under 50% of global oil at the moment. He said if we look at oil reserves, the existing BRICS plus aspiring members like Venezuela have over 20 times the oil reserves of the US, which is massive. So he goes on, he says, so this is the end of the dollar. I mean, it's the end of the petrodollar, which has given America, the US, its dominance since 1973, basically. He believes that is finished, it is over, and the need to buy gold now is more important than it's ever been in our lifetimes. Your thoughts?
Well, first off, you mentioned the BRICS went from 5 to 10 nations. Let's look at who some of those 5 new nations are. Yep. Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Saudi Arabia, a year and a half ago or whatever, said that they would accept other currencies than only dollars. It's the first time since 1973. The UAE, about a month and a half back, came flat out and said, we will accept all currencies around the globe except $4. That's huge. If there's a second one, I mean, go back to Libya, go back to Iraq. Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi were, their countries were invaded. Their gold was stolen. That's the first thing we did. And they were killed because they talked about doing a gold-backed currency. And they were talking about selling oil in non-dollars. The U.S. can't go in and attack Saudi Arabia or attack the UAE. From a military standpoint, we're no longer, the big guy on the block. The bully basically has had his bluff called. As far as the comments from Egon, keep in mind, I'm sure you both have read it, and hopefully your audience has read The Great Taking. And what that has to do is basically whether it's a bank or a broker or an insurance company, if you have intermediaries between you and your capital, you're going to lose your capital. So that's why I believe Egon is saying, buy gold now or you're going to lose your fortune, because you're going to wake up, markets won't open, you'll call your broker and nobody's going to answer the phone. And this is not speculation. These are laws that are already written on the books all over the world, where people who have bank accounts, brokerage accounts, insurance products, it's not theirs legally anymore. They're the beneficiary, but the owner of those assets are the banks, are the brokers, are the insurance companies, not you. So I think it's important to understand, that aspect of it. And I think that's probably why Egon's, so adamant at this point. And I would add one more thing. From a timing standpoint, my thought process is I would give it less than a 50-50 chance that the U.S. has an election. And don't ask me for what possible reason, whether it be real or a false flag or whatever. The powers that be that are in charge right now, I think they understand that if there is an election, that there's no way that they can cheat enough to be able to win. If they lose, then some semblance of a rule of law is going to take over, and you're going to see a lot of people going to jail. So from the standpoint of not having an election, the most likely scenario would be some type of false flag. And you've got a financial market or financial markets that are teetering on a tightrope, and you get some type of false flag. It'll topple markets, and you've got over $2 trillion in derivatives that are going to blow up. So basically, in my opinion, my guess is that they're going to kick the table over prior to the election so that there's not an election. And then that will then lead to a domino effect where brokerage houses, banks, insurance companies, they go down. And this includes if you have stock in digital form with transfer agents. That stock is on their books. It's on their balance sheet for you as a beneficiary. And again, this is not speculation. These laws are on the books. So I think the time is coming between now and the U.S. election where people are going to wake up and find out, oh my gosh, I don't have anything.
Cool. Well, you got to act now.
Yeah. Look, and I know that we have been saying this for a lot, and thank heaven we have, because we have acted now, and Brian and I have acted now for the last 30 years. And I look back to when we bought gold and we were paying $400 an ounce for it, and now you're paying $3,000. I mean, how far does it have to climb before people wake up to the fact that it's on a ride, and it will continue to be so, but you just won't be able to access it for anything like a realistic price.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have an answer for you on that. You said, how long will it take for people to wake up? They'll wake up when they can no longer buy it.
Yes.
And if that's going to happen, gold will go bid bid whatever number, and no offer for fiat currency. I believe gold will always be available for silver, and silver will always be available for gold.
Yeah.
But neither will be available at some point for fiat currency.
Yeah.
That's when people will wake up.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think you're right. For many, too late.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, look, for our audience, I mean, I have said it before, but Darryl and I keep very little in the bank for our own personal usage. I mean, you got to pay for your food, your money, your bills that come through on a monthly or quarterly basis. But that's all we do. That's the only currency we have. All of our money is in physical gold and silver. And if Darryl wants something, it's a personal possession or whatever it goes, we're not afraid to sell a couple of ounces of gold or even a kilo of gold if it came to a high price item. But because we've been saving in it for 25 years, we've got a lot of it. And that's where we try to educate our clients is don't worry about being called a gold bug. You're saving in real money.
Real money.
Real money. It's never been a gold bug. Probably last question before Darryl finishes off. Bill, this one has annoyed me because sometimes you get called conspiracy theories and things like that, but I want your answer on this. Through the interviews that I have listened to and many articles that have been written, there seems to be a common denominator. That is the interest payable on all government debt. We have heard about conspiracy theories, but I see it as I see it, the Federal Reserve prints currency out of nothing. The government calls it money, and the government pays interest on what it borrowed. This year, you've already stated, Bill, this year the US government is likely to pay, I said $1 trillion in interest. You say a little bit more at the moment, and it's growing. Two questions. First question, where does the $1 trillion in interest come from? And secondly, who does it go to? They're paying interest. Somebody's got to collect the interest, and as I see it, I've read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, and I can't see any other company, bank, but who owns entity? Who owns the bank of the Federal Reserve? So could you please answer those two? Where does that $1 trillion come from to pay the interest, and who does it go to?
Well, first off, let me just comment on conspiracy theories. I personally am running out of conspiracy theories because most all of them have turned out to be fact. Over time, things that you have spoken about, things that I've spoken about, things that many people in the alternative media have spoken about have been fact all along. So I just wanted to clear that up. As far as the interest is concerned, at this point, as I mentioned, the U.S. took in $4.7 trillion in taxes. So to pay $1 trillion in interest, theoretically, that comes from the tax receipts, and it's a little better than 20%. And I mean, the simple answer on who do we pay the interest to, it's whoever owns the bonds, wherever those are. A lot of those are held in Social Security in the U.S. They're held by foreign governments. So whoever holds the treasury bonds, they get paid the interest. And I do want to mention this because I forgot to on the previous segment while we're speaking of foreign nations that own treasury debt. You mentioned that U.S. sequestered $300 billion of Russian monies.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget what the date was. You said August 29th or something of 22 and I just reposted that, I guess within the last week, because now they're talking about taking that $300 billion and using that to rebuild the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first off, the U.S. attracted capital since World War II because we had the pristine rule of law. And going in and stealing another nation's money or the asset that they lent to the United States in the first place, basically we're defaulting to Russia. We're stealing the bonds, telling them, you've lost your principal, we're not paying you your interest. Too bad. So now the rest of the world is going to look at that and they're going to say, well, if the U.S. thinks they can do that to Russia, can they do it to us? And the answer is, of course. Right. So that's the first thing as far as the U.S. attracted capital since World War II because of the rule of law, that we were it was a fair judicial system, and we stood up to our promises. The other thing, and this has failed over the last, well, certainly since the U.S. left Afghanistan, say for the last 20 years, the reason the dollar stayed as the world's reserve currency was because the U.S. military was the prop under it. If anybody got out of line, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, if anyone got out of line, the U.S. military went in and picked them up. Well, guess what? Now we're at a point where the U.S. was completely embarrassed leaving Afghanistan. The Ukraine is completely lost. I mean, that war, they should just stop it, because, you have people dying and there's no way that can be turned around. The point I'm trying to illustrate is the U.S. military is no longer the biggest, baddest boy on the block. In fact, Russia has hypersonic weapons, and the U.S. has not had a hypersonic test that's been successful yet.
Right.
So they have weapons that we can't catch. And my biggest fear right now is we've got all these ships in the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf that, against hypersonic weapons, they have no defense. And I shudder to wake up one morning and find out that a destroyer, or God forbid, an aircraft carrier got sunk while I was sleeping, because that will be completely game over for the dollar. So those two things, I think, underscore the collapse of because those were two big props that are now gone.
Yeah, right. All I can say, Darryl, is that, and what we've been saying before from everything that Bill says and other commentators that we talk to, I'm so glad we have gold. Gold and silver. I know you can't eat it, but you can't eat dollar notes either, folks. You have a pile of dollar notes and
not bankrupt and at default. That's why you need to own gold.
Yeah.
Because you have to have a store of value that cannot evaporate overnight, because the credit system is going to evaporate overnight. It's already beginning to default.
Yeah. Yep. Darryl?
Wealth of information once again. Yeah. Bill, we always refer to a gentleman, an American, that spoke consistently. He was a motivational speaker, but his name was Charlie Tremendous Jones. And he would always say, in 10 years' time, you're going to be in exactly the same position that you're in right now, apart from two things: the people you meet and the books you read. And the further I have continued in life, the more I realize that he was absolutely 100% correct. And we've been fortunate enough today to be speaking with Bill and gained an enormous amount of knowledge in the process. And I would think, Bill, that 20 or 30,000 viewers that are watching this channel right now, I think quite a percentage of those would like to be able to make contact with you. So if, in fact, they wanted to do so, what would they do?
And you can go to our website. It's www.billholter.com. I have changed my email address. You can find it on the website. But my business email address is bholton@proton.me.
Okay. Thanks, fantastic. Because, hey, to be able to connect with somebody like Bill Holter, you can't even put a value on it. We've learned that in life. And the first time that we connected with Jim Rickards, I know what we did to meet him. And it was just represented enormous value to us, and it has ever since. So please take advantage, if you're viewing this channel right now, to connect with Bill, because you will be a wiser person in the process.
And now you know that Bill is coming to Australia in November. Keep the contact going there, because you can then shake hands with Bill and and also be part of the whole story when the group of people come over in November.
Yeah, 100%. Just in completing, we make reference to these people every time we do an interview. Peter Daniels, of course, our lifetime mentor, who would say, "I do not care what actions are being experienced in the world tonight. I don't care what poorly executed economic decisions are being made. For me, it doesn't matter. I'll be able to party tomorrow." And why would he be able to do that? Because he owns gold.
Yeah.
Jim Sinclair, of course, and Jim, Bill's former business partner,
Recently passed.
who recently passed, which was extremely sad. But, none of us are going to forget, of course, Jim Sinclair and many comments that he made, but one of which was become your own central bank. Why would you do that? All central banks own gold. Just do what they do, because without it, they have nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Money, cash, currency is worthless. It only represents value if it's backed with gold.
Egon says, basically, how much gold, he gets asked the question, how much gold should you have? And the answer is whatever you cannot afford to lose, right? And Darryl and I can't afford to lose much at all. So that's why we have it in gold, because it can't be taken away from you.
No, exactly. And I know, of course, that Ray Dalio recommends 5 to 10% of your net worth in gold. When you look at that, and the gentleman's worth $18 billion. A lot of people underestimate it, say, well, okay, 10% for him, it's easy. But if we're talking about 10% of $18 billion, which is approximately $1.8 billion, so he's serious about gold. So, look, thank you once again, Bill. Really appreciate your time, your input, and constant support of this channel. Really looking forward to catching up with you, of course, when you come over to the land down under, and that'll be spectacular, to say the least. And to our supporters, to our viewers, subscribers, thank you once again for continuing to support this channel. So until next time, stay well, stay focused, and goodbye for now.
Goodbye for now.